All right, welcome to the second part of Session 7. This part is on the outer game of practice and the outer game of developing your conversation skills. So how do you practice the techniques you want to implement? Well, my recommendation is that you pick one technique at a time and drill that one down. I'm going to be going over all the major techniques that you've learned throughout this program and talk about ways you can practice it. First, though, I'm going to briefly run through some small talk secrets. These are things that we didn't necessarily go over yet, but I think they will help you just generally help the flow of your conversations go more smoothly. Small talk secret number 1. Always provide bait when you answer a question or make a statement. We talked a little bit about bait throughout this entire program, but what you want to do is, what it means is when somebody says, "Where are you from?" don't just say, "New Jersey." Give them something to follow it up with, like, "Oh, I'm from New Jersey. Did you ever see that website, Hot Chicks with Douchebags? Yeah, that's pretty much half our state." Or you could say, "Oh, I'm from Brooklyn," which is like the ultimate place to be single if you're gay. The same can be said when someone asks you what you do for a living. Never just say, "Oh, I'm a real estate agent." Say, "I drive bright-eyed young couples around, showing them houses they can't afford until they finally come back to reality, and then I sell them one they can." Also drop in other baits like, "I'm a real estate agent. Didn't quite achieve my dream of being a fireman and saving kittens from trees, but it's cool because I get to drive around bright-eyed young couples, etc., etc., etc." What you're doing is you're adding meat to every sentence you craft. Add things that other people can latch onto until the conversation heats up and moves past the small talk. By saying something like, "Oh, I'm from New Jersey. Did you ever see that website, Hot Chicks with Douchebags?" and, tying that in, now she can either say, "Yeah, I have seen it. Oh my God, that is such a hilarious website." Or if she didn't see it, you can explain it to her. You're like asking her to say, "What do you mean Hot Chicks with Douchebags?" It's like you're bringing into a conversation rather than just the boring answer of, "I'm from New Jersey." What you also want to do is you also want to keep your eyes open for similar statements and bait that they give you. This means that if you ask a girl, "Where are you from?" and she says, "Oh, I'm from the Jersey Shore," and doesn't say anything, it's going to make it a lot harder for you. But if you say, "Where are you from?" and the girl goes, "Oh, I'm from the Jersey Shore. Used to live in Brooklyn, though it's not as good down there." And now you can say, "Oh, why do you like that better?" You're looking for the things she's dropping in. You're keeping your eyes open for the meat she's giving you. But you want to be consciously always giving meat to other people that you're talking to, because you can't just give close-ended answers because they're not going to have anything else to say. Not everybody's a great conversationalist. Most people are horrible conversationalists, and you got to help them out. And by helping them out, it helps you out, and it just makes you both work together as like a team of conversationalists. The small talk tactic number 2 is when you introduce someone to a group or to another person, always use this as an opportunity to state something about them. Preferably something positive or a little joke if you're kind of on a teasing level with the woman. Like if you're talking to a girl at the bar and, you had been talking about music and your friends walk over, you go, "Oh, this is Sally. She's obsessed with Michael Bolton, but don't hate her for it." What you're doing there is you're breaking that awkwardness of introducing somebody into the conversation. They're a little timid, and everybody's a little timid to bring somebody new in. But by saying something, you're kind of letting everybody just jump right into it. Like if you introduce one of your friends, if you're talking to a group of girls and your friend comes over, and instead of just making him kind of sit there going, "Hey, this is Jeff," and he just kind of stands there waiting, you can say, "Hey, this is Jeff. Hey, he just got back from DJing a party down the street." Now you're like, they have something to talk about. And that's what you want to do. The whole idea of all these small talk tactics is to make things keep going smooth, to kill off awkward silences and lulls in conversation. Another small talk secret is look for key words coming out of a woman's mouth. If you pay attention, you'll find out exactly what she prefers talking about and what topics stir up emotion for her. If she seems bored talking about her job, but her eyes perk up when she starts talking about marathons, jump on that topic. We all have those certain things we love to talk about, and we're going to try to get other people to talk about it. We're not going to openly say it because we don't want to totally force feed the conversation. But like, for instance, me, I love talking about books and social dynamics and human nature. So I'll say things in a conversation hoping that somebody's going to pick up on it. And if a smart girl or an intelligent conversationalist noticed, they would pick up on that and we'd be able to have an excellent conversation. It would run smoothly. Well, what you want to do is you want to pick up on those hints that other people are giving you, and they will give them to you. You have to kind of look at the body language shifts that somebody makes when there's something that they want to talk about as to something that they're bored talking about. You'll notice it. If a certain topic comes up and all of a sudden the girl leans forward or you see her straighten up her body, you know that she's like more interested now, that she wanted to talk about that. Don't just ignore that and let it move on. Stay on that. Go back to that and let her open up. Another small talk tactic is something called parroting. And this is something really good to use if you're stuck with what to say. What you do is you just parrot back to someone the last thing that they said. For instance, if a woman said, "I went for a fantastic run this morning," and you're stumped and you like don't know how to something interesting to say, just repeat fantastic quizzically. So if a girl goes, "I went for a fantastic run this morning," you'd say, "Oh, fantastic, huh?" This puts the ball back in her court, and now she's more likely to explain what was fantastic about it, instead of you having to say, "Oh, what was fantastic about it?" or "Oh, really?" Like, you're just kind of saying, "Fantastic, huh?" And now she's got the pressure on her again. And it's just a good tactic to use if somebody's telling you a story or somebody's telling you something that happened and you can't think quick enough of a good way to come back or a good reaction. You just parrot back to them. Another small talk tactic is scan news sites or social bookmarking sites like dig.com or fark.com for interesting stories, so that if you hit a hole, you just bring one of these stories into a conversation. You'll find these all over. I mean, it's like, say you're running out of something to say and you're kind of like, shit, I don't know what to talk about. But earlier in the day, you had been on Dig and you saw a story about a woman who had 12 babies and one of them came out with 2 heads. You just sit there and start giggling to yourself and go, what the hell would you do if you had 12 babies? And the girl would be like, what? She'd kind of be like, why are you, where's this coming from? And you go, before I left to come here, I was just on this website looking at pictures of 12 babies. And for some reason right now, I just had a flashback of 12 little kids running around and just, once you say that you read it somewhere, now it's like, oh, he read it somewhere, and she's just going to kind of go along with it, and now you have this new conversation topic. These are just small talk tactics. They're not things that are going to kind of build attraction, but they're things that when you start hitting lulls or awkwardnesses, they're things to do to kind of break that awkwardness. Now we're going to go over some of the more powerful conversation tactics. These are the things that I talked about with Sin, kind of separate the boys from the men. All right, the first tactic I want to talk about is the idea of storytelling. And the reason I want to start with storytelling is because if you can learn to tell a good story, you can sort of weave all the other techniques and tactics within the confines of a story. It allows you to demonstrate value. It allows you to tease. It allows you to use cold reads and elicit values from women just through telling a story. So how do you practice storytelling? Well, the first thing you need to do is to go on your computer and create a new folder on your desktop, or if you have a lot of people that kind of stop by and use your computer without you knowing, I would maybe create a hidden folder and begin creating a story collection. Anytime you hear a good story, whether it's from one of your friends, whether it's you, or whether you read it somewhere, write it down. Once you have these stories written down, what you got to do next is you got to craft them to become even better. There are several elements of a good story and good storytelling, and that is, the first thing you want to do is you want to set the story in a specific time, and you want to have characters in a story who want something specific, and you want to let the conflict develop out of the different goals or objectives of the characters. What this does is it kind of grounds the story. It makes it more real rather than saying, yeah, I was at the beach this time and I was, trying to go in the ocean and a dog ran by and I was chasing the dog. By saying, I was at the beach in Fort Lauderdale one time, and this little German Shepherd rode by as I was trying to go into the ocean to surf. You're kind of giving it a lot more details, and you're letting them see the story and kind of take an involvement in it more. The second thing is something needs to happen, and the conditions at the end of the story need to have changed from the beginning of the story. And I don't just mean like changed as in the beginning of the story you wanted to go to the store to buy ice cream, and at the end of the story you came home and you bought ice cream. What I mean by that is, if in the beginning of the story you wanted to go to the store to buy ice cream, something at the store has to happen that when you got home, you no longer cared about the ice cream, but you sort of learned a lesson. And that's kind of the next part, is the main character needs to learn something or see something about themselves in the unfolding of the events. It's not a story worth telling if there was not some change in you, whether it just be something small like your expectations were surprised and it was just something funny, or something more major like you went to the store to buy ice cream, but then when you were at the store you met somebody who couldn't afford ice cream and you gave them $5 and they went and this little kid bought himself ice cream and you went home and you felt really good about, helping this little kid. Stupid, exaggerated story I just told. It was off the top of my head, but what I'm saying by that is you get the point of how something happens that wasn't really what the story started out as happening, because that's what makes a story good. You also want to make this story more visceral, and you use words to make it more visceral. Help them see it. That's part of the reason why you set it in a specific time and you add details, but really flesh it out. Like if you're not, don't just say I was in the store buying ice cream, walking down the aisle. Say I was walking down the aisle and I'm looking at the different boxes of cereals, the Cocoa Krispies and the Count Chocula's, and then I get down to the other aisle and there's this kid there and he's like got really tattered clothes on and he's got a little dirt on his chin, and I'm looking at him and I start feeling really bad because I'm wondering, like, I'm in this upscale Whole Foods, yet there's this little poor kid running around and I'm wondering what the hell is going on. And you see how by saying that it's a lot different than saying, oh, and then I just saw this little beggar kid. You're describing him. You're letting the girl see the story, and it makes it a lot more interesting. The final thing is that the first 10 words of the story are worth the next 10,000 combined, and the last thing said is the first thing remembered, which means start your stories off strong and end them great. Everything else in between is good, but you got to capture their attention right from the start. So what you want to do is you want to craft 3 or 4 really good stories, and then practice learning to tell them. Tell them alone in your room. Practice them into a recorder. I told you earlier on to buy a recorder. Practice your stories into the recorder. Tell the stories to your friends, to your coworkers, to your family members. And then if the story gets a good reaction, keep it. Never throw a good story away just because you've told it a couple times. Remember, the girl you're talking to is hearing it for the first time. Everyone loves a good story. I had a friend who had this story that he used to tell over and over again. And I would be standing next to him, and I'd hear like the first sentence coming out of his mouth, and I'd start cringing, going, oh my God, he's telling this story again. And it never failed that 5 minutes later, the girls were cracking up, laughing, asking him about it, because it's the first time they're hearing it. And that's what you have to remember, is that just because you've told a story or your friends have told a story and they know it, it's still good if you're telling it to somebody for the first time. That is how routines are born, and a lot of people sort of have that negative connotation against routines, thinking that it's too calculated or planned. But naturals, guys like my friend I was telling you about who are just naturally good with women, they know when they tell a good story and it gets a good reaction to keep using it. They create a routine. They don't know consciously, like, I just created a routine and I'm going to call this routine the good story routine. They just keep telling it because they know it works, and that's what you have to do. When you tell a good story and it works, keep telling it. That's how you practice storytelling. So, what you want to do is then develop different stories for different moods. Create a story that you want to use if everybody's sitting around kind of bored and you want to sort of inspire people. Have a story that tells that kind of outcome. If you have a story that you want to use to kind of get the subject of sex to come up, use a story that you've told that's gotten good reaction that initiates the topic of sex. If you want to kind of demonstrate some higher value about yourself, pull out one of your stories that sort of puts you in a positive light, doing something good, demonstrating you as a leader of men, and have these stories ready. I mean, I would suggest creating about 4 of them that you really perfect, that you tell often, and that you use your mini recorder and listen to yourself and get the whole flow of the story right. Learn when to pause, when not to pause, when to speed up the story, what parts can be cut out to make it even better. And eventually you'll just have a really great story. All right, the next technique that we're going to talk about is grounding. And what grounding is dropping human elements about yourself to make you seem more three-dimensional. It's making a conscious effort to talk about how you were scared of clowns when you were a little kid, or how you have a grandmother who wanders into neighborhood houses and you have to go find her like she's a lost dog, or how you're a hypochondriac and you get a weird rash, you spend hours Googling pictures of it, or that you subscribe to Us Weekly, or anything else that gives you a human element, that gives her a sneak peek behind the curtains of what you're really like without your mask on. And what's great about grounding is that you can practice it on anyone. I think we heard so many times that it's not polite to talk about yourself that we've started to believe it. But that's an erroneous saying. It is not polite to talk endlessly about yourself, but you must create the habit of letting people see little glimpses of the real you. These are the things that bring you to life. They take you from being some random guy in a bar that she had a few laughs with to a real human being that she honestly wants to see again. If you're not exactly sure who you are, take the time right now to write down 3 pages worth of random things about you. Write down your funny childhood memories, your strange fears, your most embarrassing moments, your secret desires, your childhood longings. Write down interesting things about your family, quirky things about your person, all the unique things that make you, you. And now get in the habit of looking for opportunities to drop these things in. This was something that was really difficult for me. For some reason, even though when a girl would start talking to me and she would tell me something that was a little embarrassing. Like I'd talk to a girl and she'd be like, oh my God, in high school I used to get picked on by this one girl who called me blah, blah, blah name. And then she'd start talking about it. And on the surface you would think, oh, she just told you that she got picked on in high school. That's kind of demonstrating lower value and, why is she telling you that? But in reality, what happens is you kind of feel a little bond with her. You feel like you know her a little bit more than her just being some random girl in a bar. And by doing that, it grounds you and makes you seem like somebody that has a life outside of just this role that you're in right now of picking up a woman at the bar. She can imagine you with your grandmother. She can imagine you on the computer Googling weird rashes. And, those are the kind of things that, those are the things that when you have a girlfriend that you fall in love with her about. You don't fall in love with that act that she's putting on at a bar. You fall in love with her weird facial expressions she makes, or the funny things that make her her. So the sooner that you start giving women those things, the more comfortable she's going to feel around you and the more rapport she's going to feel, rather than if you're just kind of keeping to that cool bar guy image. The next concept and technique that I want to talk about is the idea of time bridging and future projecting. I have a friend, Bill, who is a master at creating an almost instantaneous rapport with people. He'll hang out with them one day and it'll be like he's known them for years. Girls, guys, anyone I've ever introduced to him has always liked him. For a long time, I used to spend time analyzing what he was doing to create this rapport. But it wasn't until I learned the concept of time bridging and future projecting that I realized exactly what he was doing. And he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know he was using a technique. It was something he did naturally. And as he would talk to someone and he would find a mutual interest, he would make future plans with them to do something together. For instance, if he was talking to a girl and she liked Bruce Springsteen, he'd say something like, "Oh, have you ever seen him in concert?" And if she said no, he'd be like, "Oh my God, he's so good. Next time he comes to Giant Stadium, we have to go and we'll tailgate. It'll be great." Or if he finds out a girl is into yoga, he'll say something like, "I've never been able to figure out how to hold those poses. You're going to have to give me lessons one day, but you can't laugh at me if I can't do it right." He would casually make these indefinite plans for some time in the future, even though he would never set a date or pressure the girl into confirming the plans. By just merely introducing them into the conversation allowed her to imagine a time in the future with him, or as Captain Jack calls it, time bridge. This is a weird phenomena, as it actually makes you feel like you've known the person longer once you've imagined spending time with them in the future. So how do you practice time bridging? Well, what you want to do is you want to begin looking for opportunities within a conversation to make a future date. Find something that you have a genuine mutual interest in or you're curious about and casually say, "We need to do that together one day." Don't dwell on it. Don't try to get them to commit. Just throw it out there. If you're talking to somebody and they say they like to snowboard, be like, "Oh my God, I know the best mountain. It's this mountain up in Kinnelon Lake, and it's got the best trails. We got to go one time. I guarantee I'll beat you down the mountain." You know, what you're doing is just make a habit right now to throw a time bridge and a future projection into every conversation you have. Nobody's going to look at you weird because it's not like you're going to say, "We have to go snowboarding sometime. When do you want to go? I'll book the hotel right now." You're not saying that. You're just saying, "We have to go sometime together." And then you're dropping it. Remember to carry that laminated card around with you with these techniques on it. Write down time bridging, teasing. Write down time bridging, teasing, future projections. Write down role playing. Write down cold reading. Write down all these different techniques. Laminate it and keep it in your pocket so that you remember to use it. All right, the next technique that I want to talk about is the idea of teasing. Teasing is what begins to create the sexual tension with a woman. You need teasing to take the pressure off a conversation and let a woman know that you're fun at heart. Teasing always allows you the opportunity to get physical with a woman, and it gives you a chance to playfully push her, touch her, spank her. The best form of teasing is that childish playground humor. It's picking on her. It's playfully competing against her, overly bragging. It's pointing out the funny face she makes when she gets angry with someone. It's pretending to give her a high five and then leaving her hanging. It's imitating something she has said, like, "Oh my God, I love this song," or imitating a facial expression she just made. It's playfully taking her hand and pushing it into some guy's ass that's standing in front of her. It's all those immature things that are just so damn fun to do. The beauty of these things is that on the surface, they're just childish fun things. But the both of you know that this is a form of underlying sexual communication. And what's great is that it's under the radar. Even though she knows the two of you are flirting, her anti-slut defense does not go up because you've disguised this sexual communication as teasing. So how do you practice teasing? Well, once again, you need to just train yourself to be the type of guy who teases everyone. You can't walk around serious with a stick up your ass 24/7. Then on Friday nights when you finally go out to a bar, you mysteriously transform into this guy who's fun and playful. No, you need to become fun and playful all the time. Here's a tip for teasing. The quicker you introduce it into a conversation, the more natural it's going to feel. If you start a conversation and you talk serious for like an hour, and then all of a sudden you decide you want to start teasing her, the shift is going to be really apparent. So right off the bat, what you want to do is you want to bring some teasing and ball busting into the conversation. Make it simple, make it fun, but just do it. Just get in the habit with everyone you talk to. Look for opportunities to just bust their balls. The next tactic is role-playing. Role-playing is great because it's essentially teasing mixed with future projections. This gives you an opportunity to be playful with a woman while at the same time getting her to think about seeing you again sometime. What is a role play? It is creating an imaginary scenario and imaginary personas that the two of you can carry out together. So let's say you're talking to a girl and you tell her that you're going to Italy next week, and she says jokingly, "Can I come?" Instead of laughing it off, you would say something like, "Yeah, I'll hide you in my suitcase. When we get there, you can actually be my paparazzi. I've been looking for somebody to follow me around and kind of take pictures and everything." So what you're going to do is you're just basically going to follow me around, snap pictures, like point at me like I'm someone famous. The idea will be to get all the Italian girls to think I'm some rich celebrity American. So then you can probably even sell the tabloids, sell the pictures to a local tabloid. And then what we can do is we can use that money and we can travel to Monaco and gamble. But of course what I'm going to do is I'm going to wind up losing you in a poker game to a rich Iranian sheik. You see how I just took this absurd situation and kept making it absurder? I mean, I just made that one off the top of my head, so it wasn't like a great role play or anything, but it was playful. It probably had her giggling, and more importantly, it projected a future where the two of you were in Italy and Monaco, and it probably got her to imagine being in Italy and Monaco with you. Role-playing is something that definitely needs some shadow boxing. Just like storytelling, you need to have a few of these rehearsed. They have to sound completely spontaneous when you say them, but you really want to have an idea where you're going to go with it. Under the pressure of a social interaction, you might wind up stalling out if you haven't at least developed and practiced a role play. I know I've been in that situation where I've started one and then I've just sputtered out and it just went downhill from there. So what you want to do is you want to develop a basic outline of how a role play is going to go. How does it work? Well, you start with something, you say something else that's a little absurd, bring her into it, and then just kind of make it even more absurd. And you can practice role-playing also by sparring. This means you use role-plays in your daily conversations, and that way you train yourself to think in terms of role-playing. I'm going to give you an example of how I used to do this. I used to do this with my brother all the time when we were bored at work. We used to paint houses together, and a typical one that we used to do all the time is I'd be like, "Yo, man, we should make one of those crazy infomercials telling people how you can make $1 million painting houses," and then talk about how we'd have these pictures of us covered in paint, counting cash at the end of the day, or scenes of us bossing around our immigrant employees, and the two of us would just go back and forth with this role play for hours, just killing time at work. I do this with my friends all the time. We'd talk about if we just got back from Brazil, how we were going to set up a tour, tours down to Brazil, and we were going to have the Brazilian girls working down there, and we would get them to show off the rich Americans and just create this thing that we kind of knew it was never going to happen. You knew that we were never really going to move down to Brazil and set up a tour company, but just allowing yourself to have those fantastical role playing with your friends and with your coworkers and stuff, that will train you to think that way. That way when you're in front of a girl and you see an opportunity, you can run with it because you've used it and you've practiced role playing. You've gotten the habit of the idea of making it absurd, the progression of absurdity. All right, the next tactic that I want to talk about today is the idea of cold reading. Cold reading is sort of like role playing. It's one of those things that are amazing if you know how to use them correctly. But if you don't practice them often and you don't have some idea of where you're going to go with it, it can easily stall out. You also have to have some knowledge of cold reading in general. The best tactic is to read a few books on cold reading, learn the major ideas behind them. I have included a special report in the Social Training Lab that describes a lot of these. I would also recommend books by Ian Rowling and Darren Brown. Once you have a good grasp on the way cold reads are delivered, then I would practice using the basic ones first. Get good at using the examples that I've included, and then begin to create your own. Take the principles behind cold reading and add humor to them. Add some of your own personality. You don't need to be the psychic mystery guy to use them. It works just as well, if not better, if you use them in a playful way. Make up your own and go out there and test them. See what kind of reactions you get. If it piques interest, keep it in your arsenal. If it falls flat, drop it. And keep tweaking what works until you find about 5 that work really well together. Begin to add your own personality to them. Brad P has a palm reading routine that I thought I would use as an example here. And this is an example of how he took palm reading, which he knew very little bit about, and he kind of made it his own. I've used his variations in the field plenty of times and always got great results with the girls I used it with. I'm going to repeat this as the way I heard it from Brad P as he described it on an interview with David D'Angelo that I heard a few years back. So, this is as described as Brad P does it. Put your hand out. Then I'll look at the lines and say, "Oh, you're one of those girls." And then she'll say, "What does that mean?" And I'll say, "Well, if you have one line here, it means you're a virgin. If you have two lines here, it means you have average sexual experience. If you have three lines, it means you're a sex guru, sex expert, sex ninja." So she'll say, okay. And also, if I don't like the number of lines that are there, I'll just kind of bend her hand and try to get an extra line in there. So then I'll pick something up on her other hand. It doesn't really matter which line you pick because this is just simple palm reading. It's not even real. So I'll pick another line and I'll say, "What we have here is your love line. Now, by looking at this, I can tell that you're kind of a girl who's who's great in relationships. You make a great girlfriend, and right now you're kind of dating around. You're seeing a few different guys, and the weirdest thing keeps happening to you. You tend to go out on one or two dates with a great guy, and you think you like him, but after 2 dates, you just lose all attraction to him, and you don't know why." Okay, so this is something that every woman has experienced, but most women don't really talk about it. It's like a female truism. It's true of all women, but it's hardly ever talked about, and they don't even really think about it. So then I'll pick some other line and I'll say, "Okay, this is your laugh line. From this, I can tell that you have a very, very good sense of humor. You actually have kind of an offbeat sense of humor. Okay, see that little line that intersects with it? That means that sometimes you just don't get the joke. Like, do your friends ever call you a dumb blonde?" Or if she's a brunette, I'll say, "Do your friends ever ask you if blonde roots?" Then I'll go to the large line that goes from just below the thumb to the side of the hand. It's pretty much the longest line on her hand, and I'll say, "This is your lifeline, and you have this other line parallel to it, and from the parallel line I can tell what you were in a former life. You were a butterfly, or a ladybug." Basically, I'll say anything that a girl will like. So, for instance, if you say you were a butterfly, chances are the girl will say, "Oh my God, I have a butterfly tattoo." Or if I say ladybug, she'll be like, "Oh my God, my screen name is Ladybug69. So that's why you pick some certain kinds of female-friendly animals. So then I'll say to her that her lifeline is really long. You're going to live to be really old. But here's this little split in it, and what this is a near-death experience. You're going to go into the tunnel, and you're going to totally going to see the light. And then you're going to come back out, and it's going to be really intense experience. And a little further down, you have another cross. And what this is, it's a life-changing experience. Okay, hold on. I'm getting a vision. I can see it. Okay, you're going to meet this athletic, brown-haired J. Crew guy when you're in your mid-20s. I can't see who he is, but it's going to be a life-changing experience. So basically what I'm doing is I'm describing myself at this point. So if you're a tall Asian guy, you say you're going to meet a tall Asian rocker guy, and it's going to be a life-changing experience. I can't make out his face, but he's wearing a red shirt, and you're standing in a bar. Oh, it's gone. I lost it. I lost the vision. But yeah, that's your future. It's kind of serious. It's kind of a joke, but it sounds pretty psychic, and it's funny. So what you basically do is you basically create little things like this that have a real basic level of cold reading or palm reading, and I've included some material in the social training lab on both cold reading and palm reading. Now, once you develop a routine like this, what you want to do is practice it at home. Practice the delivery. The smoother and more natural, the better. That way, when you get out in the field and you try to do this cold read, you can take this one too. This is Brad P's, and you can just kind of write down as I said it and use it just as I said it. and make this your practice one, I know I'm going to repeat it again that I know a lot of people hate the idea of using routines, but there's a reason why routines are taught, and it's because they work. So take this one if you like it and practice this one on girls in the field. The next tactic is sexual framing. And this is the final outer game tactic. And it's also the hardest to master and hardest to practice. And this is because you only want to practice on women you're attracted to. And you have to get far enough into the conversation to use it. And it takes a little balls. Captain Jack talked about using some sexual framing routines along with a statement of intent. And that's the best way to really get the sexual frame going. The first thing I would practice is making sure you make a statement of intent. Introduce a sexual intent early on into your conversation. So anytime you're talking to a girl from here on out that you are talking to her with the intention of having some sort of sexual relations with her at some point in the future, early into the conversation, say something like, "That thing you did with your hair is driving me crazy," or "You've got an incredible sexual energy." You're basically saying something to let her know that you're a sexual man and that you view her in a sexual light. This disqualifies any notion of "let's be friends" or "I thought that, I thought we were just friends." She knows at this point that you see her in a sexual light. Plus, once you pop a little nugget like that into a conversation, the woman will unconsciously start sizing you up for a sexual encounter. Most women are not used to a man being so direct about his sexual desire. It's extremely attractive for them. So after you say this, just go about your normal conversation for a while. You don't have to dwell on the sexuality. Later on, you can reintroduce the topic through a cold reading routine like the Brad P. example I just gave, or a routine like the Strawberry Fields that Captain Jack described earlier in his session. Sexual framing is also about setting the frame or the tone of an interaction. Something I noticed a while ago and I've been teaching for a while is women have much more pliable frames than guys, which means if you treat a woman like she's your girlfriend, she'll act like that. If you treat her like you're courting her, she'll hold off before you have sex with her. If you treat her like she's looking to get fucked in the ass in the bathroom, she'll often act in that frame too. So you're basically looking to bring some positive stereotypes out of girls. Let them know it's okay to present that side of them to you. And what you're doing is you're trying to build an identity with the person you're talking to, a sexual identity. And you can build this identity and create this sexual frame through the use of stories I talked about a little bit earlier. You can also use role-playing to create a sexual frame. For instance, as I'm recording this, we're about a month away from Halloween. So if I were talking to a girl tonight, I might say something like, "I'm going to a Halloween party. You should come with me. You can dress as Santa's little helper, and I'll dress as Santa. And you can wear this really sexy outfit, and I'll have on a Santa suit, and I'll just walk around giving you big spankings and going, 'Ho, ho, ho, you've been a bad girl.'" It's something stupid, but you can see how it's just an easy way to kind of bring that sexual spanking and slutty outfit into a conversation. But because you're kind of hiding it into like a conversation about Halloween party and costumes, you can get away with it. Or you can use cold reads. You can say something like, "I sense you're the reserve type. You sort of keep your desires at bay. You don't drink too much. You tend to keep in shape. But you got this side of you that when it comes out, it just has this unquenchable sexual appetite." Can you see how just bringing this sort of stuff into a conversation completely changes the dynamic rather than talking about bubblegum and ice cream or her job? And then you add physical touch. Physical touch is the glue that holds all the sexual framing together. Without it, you're all talk. With it, the woman knows she's just met a man that's capable of ravaging her. And most women very rarely run into a guy that they feel is a man capable of making this happen, of like letting her live out one of her sexual fantasies. Now, the only real way to practice sexual framing is to do it in the field. Sure, you can develop routines and cold reads, but that's just one of those things that, the cold reads and the routines are the verbal aspect of it, but you got to get down the body language aspect of it, the pacing. And it's one of those things that it's more than just the words that come out of your mouth. It's the combination of the words, the body language, tonality, slowing down your motions, touching her. And these things must be practiced a lot in field. You need to remember to do this. And this is why I recommend carrying a laminated index card or go out and buy some sort of bracelet. Make this your sexual framing bracelet. Every time you look down at it, remind yourself to amp up the sexuality. Now, as far as the index card I told you to make and laminate, write down on the index card the word sexual framing, write down the word cold reading, role playing, teasing, time bridging, grounding, and storytelling. Now, go to a Staples or an Office Depot and laminate that card. Put it in your wallet or in your pocket when you go out. And just look at it often. And what you're going to do is you're going to start training your mind to start looking for opportunities to use these different techniques. Because if you don't have that card in your pocket and you go out, since you're not used to using them, you're not going to remember to use them. So how do you proceed from here? Well, this is what I recommend. Listen to this audio program several times. Each time you listen to it, jot down notes of the things that resonate with you. Trust me, you need to hear something like this 3 or 4 times before you can pick up all the details and meanings of what is being taught. In the meantime, craft a practice routine. It must be a routine, and you must discipline and force yourself to do it. Maybe you need to block off an hour a day for shadowboxing. Get up an hour earlier in the morning or do it on your lunch break. Just do it. Figure out what social circles you can use for sparring practice. Have the index card in your pocket and remember to introduce all these things you've been practicing on your time during your shadowboxing and bring them into all the conversations you've had. If you're going to spend time writing down stories and crafting stories and have a file full of stories, you got to remember to use them in your conversations. And if you have one particular area that you can't seem to get, make that your total focus until you get it. If you keep forgetting to ground yourself and to let little details about yourself out, forget about everything else for a while and just make it a habit to drop little grounding lines into your conversation. And for God's sake, go out and use this shit. Implementation is the key to the universe. Implementation is the key to the universe, and the speed of implementation is the ultimate key to the universe. Everything else is just mental masturbation. Now finally, you've got access to the Social Training Lab. This is filled with tips, insights, ongoing interviews with the best of the best social superstars. Take advantage of this information. And remember, it is possible to change. If you knew me 10 years ago, you would think that I was a completely different person. Now get to it.